Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Performance Scrutiny Committee being held on Thursday, the 25th of January 2023. The meeting is being webcast with the exception of any business that the committee resolves to exclude the press and public because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the Local Government Act of 1972. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with Performance Scrutiny Committee members attending in person at the Council Chamber, County Hall in Ruthin, or remotely via video conference. For transparency purposes, I will ask Rhian, the Scrutiny Coordinator, to identify which Scrutiny Committee members are in attendance and whether they are attending in person or remotely. Those
here in the chamber in County Hall in Ruthin, we've got the Chair, Councillor Hugh Irving, Councillor Martin Hogg, Councillor Carol Holliday, Councillor Terry Mendes, Councillor Bobby Feely, and Councillor Diane King. Also in County Hall, we've got the co-opting members Neil Roberts and Colette Owen. Attending remotely, we have Councillor Alan Hughes, Councillor Andrea Tomlin, Councillor Ellie Chard, Councillor Paul Keddy, and Councillor Gareth Sandilands, the Vice Chair. Also in attendance in County Hall, we've got Gary Williams, the Monitoring Officer, Committee Services Officers, and other officers who will be speaking to the committee at some point during the meeting.
Thank you, members. Those attending remotely are kindly asked to mute their microphones unless they're called upon to speak. Performance Scrutiny Committee members are also asked to have their videos switched on throughout the meeting, unless I specifically request you to turn your video off to improve the quality of the audio link when you are speaking. You will be expected to restart your video once you have finished speaking. Please also refrain from using the chat facility as messages sent to all are visible on the webcast. Those present in the chamber are asked to make sure that they speak directly into the microphone to improve the quality of the sound for those attending remotely. To aid transparency, all the meeting's business must be conducted through the chair. Take you now, please, to apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please, Rhian?
Yeah, the only apology I've received is from Mr. David Lloyd, co-opted education member, secondary parent governance sector. Unfortunately, David can't make it today, and after today's meeting, he won't no longer be a parent governor, so he has resigned his position on scrutiny. So we'll have to go out and recruit again for that sector. Also, while I'm just saying that, we welcome Colette Owen for her first meeting as the Catholic Church representative on education items.
Welcome. Item 2, direct declaration of interest. Does anybody have any interest to declare?
Do this in Welsh. Bydd aelodau yn ymwybodol o'r gyfyniad o dan god ymddygiad y cyngor I ddatgan unrhyw gysylltiad personol neu sy'n rhagfarnu mewn perthynas ag unrhyw busnes i'w ystyried yn y cyfarfod heddiw. Dylai cysylltiadau o'r fath gael eu datgelu nawr neu cyn gynted y bydd y cynghorydd neu aelod yr effeithir arnynt yn ymwybodol bod ganddynt gysylltiad personol neu sy'n rhagfarnu yn y materion heddiw. Mae'n ofynnol I holl aelodau sy'n datgan cysylltiad I nodi'n glir beth yw'r cysylltiad ac I hysbysu pa un a yw gysylltiad personol neu'n gysylltiad personol sy'n rhagfarnu fel y diffinwyd yn y cod ymddygiad. Mae'n ofynnol I unrhyw aelod sy'n datgan cysylltiad sy'n rhagfarnu I adael y cyfarfod yn ystod y drafodaeth ac ni ellir cymryd rhan mewn unrhyw drafodion. Gall aelodau a ddiddordeb personol yn unig gymryd rhan yn y drafodaeth ac unrhyw bleidlais. Os bydd cysylltiad personol sy'n rhagfarnu yn cael ei ddatgelu heddiw nad yw wedi datgelu a'i gofnodi yn blaenorol, bydd yn ofynnol i'r cynghorydd neu'r aelod dan sylw lenwi a llofnodi ffurflen datgan cysylltiad sydd yna ar gael gan staff cefnogi'r Pwyllgor sy'n bresennol heddiw neu ar-lein.
Thank you. Item 3. Sorry, any interest to declare?
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a parent governor at St Asaph VP Infant School.
I'm Town Council representative at Penmorva and Cloudalpha. Press that in.
Personal interest, and it's governor at Christchurch in Mill.
Thank you. Anything on the screen?
Yes, Ellie.
Yeah, I'm an LEA governor at YSGOL. Thank you.
Gareth.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a governor at YSGOL Cloudalpha for the LEA.
Yes, it is. Paul, do you want to declare an interest? You've got your hand up.
Yes, please. Governor at Yscol Coffin.
Yeah, Andrea.
Thank you. I have a personal acquaintance with a member of the team at item 5, but that interest would be personal, not prejudicial. Thank you.
Alan, yeah. Alan was hand up.
I'm a governor in CADEIRYDD in Corwen.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand up. I'm a LEA governor at Rose Street in Ruthin.
Thank you. I don't think I've missed anybody there. Thank you. No, so thank you. Right, we can move on now then. Item 3, urgent matters as agreed by the chair. I haven't been asked to present any, and I've been given none. Are there any other?
No.
No. Item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting, which you will find on pages 7 to 16 of your pack, or certainly in the hard copy version. I'm not sure whether the numbers match. Yeah, okay. So firstly, I will go through them for accuracy, and then I'll go back and ask for any matters arising. So for accuracy, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, and page 14. Nobody raising anything there. So I'll now go back through them for any matters arising. I'll take those by page 7, page 8, which is item 5, which runs into page 9, page 10, which runs into item 6, goes into page 11 and 12.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. Gareth?
Yeah, on page 12, at the top of page 12, it says still waiting for attainment measures from Welsh Government, and I was just wondering if we'd heard anything about that. And also on page 12, we've got a Green Denbighshire. We're still looking at the methodology around measuring carbon tonnage reduction from supply chains. I was just checking to see if we'd actually got that methodology right yet. So 2 important points to carry on that we need answers to come back to the committee on. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Do we have anything to report on?
No, I haven't got anything to report on that, and I don't know if Geraint, because Geraint is here today, if he can answer the one about the attainment measures from Welsh Government. Otherwise, the other items you asked for coming from those minutes, there was a couple of information reports sent around to you yesterday.
Right.
Those.
Okay.
Sorry, I haven't got a copy of the pack in front of me. What was the
I'll ask the question again then. It was regarding, we were waiting for the attainment measures from Welsh Government to be able to understand the performance of schools, given the context of what we discussed last time. As a performance scrutiny committee, we're always looking at where we are attainment wise, but due to the curriculum changes, there's obviously where do we stand at the moment? What do we measure, basically? It's a very important principle of this committee, and I think we should have some guidance. We were waiting on the guidance from Welsh Government. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, at the moment, the we're still waiting for the attainment measures, and also how best should we report that information so that we also stick to the Welsh Government guidance around the sharing of comparative data between schools and so on. So at the moment, but we will be able to bring a report back to scrutiny at the appropriate time with further information.
Okay. Do we have a date on when that's likely to be?
Top of my head, no, I haven't, but I will look into it after the meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gary. Cheers.
Thank you for spotting that, Gareth. I'm sure Gareth will feed back to us as soon as he's got the relevant information. So carrying on that item, it runs into page 13, and then item over the page, page 14, items 8. That completes the report. So if no other questions on the minutes, in that case, can somebody
Move.
by the Vice Chairman? Are they seconded by Carol, Councillor Carroll? Okay, thank you very much indeed. That's okay. Yeah. Over the page now, we now go to item 5 on our agenda. Extremely important item. So I hope we will be able to scrutinise thoroughly. It's on pages 17 to 74 of your pack. I'm very pleased to welcome formally now Mr. Geraint Davis, our Head of Education. Here's the lead yes. The lead member, Councillor Jill German. We weren't sure whether you'd make it or not. And that's Wayne Wheatley. And the ladies.
Ruth Thackeray.
Yeah, and also they're accompanied by Mr. Wayne Wheatley and Mrs. Ruth Thackeray. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. So if you're going to take us through the report, I hope.
So diolch Cadeirydd. So we're looking today. I know that's something that's been it's a concern. It's something that members are aware of, and that's to do with education and attendance in our schools. We know that post-COVID, life hasn't got back to normal quite yet, and that impact has been felt most greatly, I think, with our children and young people. So we've come today to talk about the things that we have in place, the work that we do with our schools, and the work in partnership wherever we can, just to mitigate where there's difficulties and get as many of our learners into school and learning in a way that they should be. Diolch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, I hope you all have a very nice CYTUNWYD day. It is the patron saint of Welsh lovers today, so I wish you all a nice diwrnod CYTUNWYD. And it did gladden my heart really at the beginning of the scrutiny meeting, hearing all the declarations of interest from members that were school governors, because the message and the purpose of the report today won't be a shock, won't be news to those of you that are school governors, because this is the bread and butter. This is one of the fundamental principles of education, is attendance. Pupils need to be in school, generally need to be in school to learn. So, as many of you are governors, you will know, you will have heard the name Wayne Wheatley. You will know of, some of the strategies and the processes that we will talk about today. As the lead member, I don't intend to go through the report point by point, because I assume that you have read it, and maybe the most valuable part of the meeting will be the questioning and the answers. But as a broad overview, as the lead member said, there has been a national decline in attendance and engagement, especially since the pandemic. Welsh Government, this is a major priority for Welsh Government. They released the Belonging, Engagement and Participation guidance recently with regards to their plan to improve to improve attendance and engagement in our schools. And only, I think it was last Thursday or maybe last Friday, it was definitely last week, Estyn released their review of improving attendance in secondary schools. Although it is specific to secondary schools, the messages that come out of the report are quite relevant for all schools. So you can see that this piece of work is right at the front of everybody's attention, and it is something that, as a local authority, we are working really closely with our 55 schools, because improving attendance, improving engagement and participation in education will have a positive impact, not only on standards, but also on well-being, and also on the, the wider benefits. Because in primary school, each and every pupil in primary school receives a nutritious, hot, balanced free school meal as well. So there are benefits across the board for good attendance. There, as part of the report, there were numerous. The challenge I had, and we had writing the report, was keeping it to the required 5 pages, because it's such a huge area of work. We could have written War and Peace on this area, hence the numerous appendices that were included with the report, from the policy, the current position, and some of the guidance for parents, and all the other documents that we included in the appendices. The position that we are at the moment is that our attendance in Denbighshire is slightly below the average attendance across Wales. Pre-pandemic, we can't blame everything on the pandemic, but it does have a role to play. Pre-pandemic, our primary schools were running on an average of about 94%, secondary schools on about 93%, whereas now from September to June, we were running on an average of about 88.9%. So you can see that for various reasons that has reduced, which is a concern, and it is something that we are working very hard to improve, to the point where we do have staff knocking on doors, trying to ensure that pupils are attending regularly. So I could talk all morning on this point, but I understand that you will have some questions that you would like to ask and to scrutinise. So if that's okay, Chair, I am happy to take any questions between us. Hopefully we can answer them all.
I think the lead member wants to come in. Is that it?
Yeah, diolch. So just to add a couple of things to that. So obviously I mentioned in my introduction about the position that we're in post-COVID. And I just wanted to mention that through visiting schools and through working with schools, that another a key aspect of this is, as Geraint quite rightly says, it hasn't magically happened since we had the pandemic, but where families are in a difficulty, where there's economic circumstances that they're struggling with, where they're struggling with things like poor housing, or not able to get into housing. So the word poverty is used more often than ever, I hear from schools. So we're dealing with a perfect storm, really, that we've had the pandemic, we've had the position that our families found themselves in, and the children, of course. I have 2 16-year-olds almost on Monday, and they missed the key part of their secondary school. So those families who are experience disadvantage in a myriad of ways will have felt that impact even more. And now they've gone on to find themselves in a cost of living crisis, in a position where they're struggling to pay the bills, they're struggling to get through the day-to-day life, and that of course has an impact on the children. So we very much we have a focus on working with families as a whole. You'll have heard me speak many times about community focused schools, and that's exactly what it is. It's looking at the child in the round. So we're working with the family, we're working in the circumstances that that family find themselves in. And also we've spoken quite recently at a members workshop, and I believe we've covered it here as well, about the trauma-informed schools approach, where we know that if we can drill down into experience perhaps parents have had and prevent those experiences repeating themselves, then again, we can make a real impact on engagement and attendance. Like Geraint, I could go on forever, but I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Good of you, Councillor. I think now we'll launch into the questions if we can, because time is not overly generous. In the room here, I think I've got Councillor Diane wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say that we all appreciate the difficulties in attendance post-lockdown and the importance of full attendance to improve the outcomes and opportunities for all the pupils, especially for the free school meal cohort. My question is, could you enlighten us to what interventions have been put in place, especially for the free school meal cohort, and explain how these interventions are measured and evaluated, and sort of compare schools, or what interventions and where have you got the data from for those interventions, and are they working? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll start off, and then I'm sure Wayne and Ruth will want to come in as well. You are the interventions that are in place are are critical, and the main interventions, one of the main difficulties is that staff levels haven't increased as the need has increased. Wayne has 4 members of his team who carry substantial caseloads to be able to intervene and support families. We have received additional Welsh Government funding through the Local Authority Education Grant to support this agenda. I have to say it has been a challenge to appoint to those posts, as you can imagine. However, we have managed to increase the team. The interventions are it varies from school to school, depending. We have got schools that their data, they have returned to their pre-pandemic levels or better. So we have got schools where attendance is strong and continues to be strong. We have got schools where the impact has been greater. So for those schools that might be causing more concern from the point of view of their attendance, they get far more interventions. I won't steal Wayne's thunder because he will talk more about the interventions from an operational point of view. From the point of view of the free school meals cohort, obviously there are a number of vulnerable pupils that we monitor, and they include, and this list is not exhaustive, we are talking our looked after community, our children. We are talking about children who are EAL, English as an additional language, our refugee cohort, Gypsy Roma travellers, free school meals, additional learning needs. These are all children, these are all groups of children that have certain vulnerabilities that might impact on their attendance that we monitor. And then the various departments within the service would be working with those families. So, for example, if it's the refugee cohorts, English as an additional language, our team of EAL staff would be working with those families and those schools to improve their attendance. So it would be a very targeted intervention in that case. We have got, obviously, the blanket, the one hat fits all approach, through the policy, through the fixed penalty notice, and warning letters, and the meeting and the general monitoring. But then there is the targeted side as well. Wayne, I don't know if you want to.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Yes, obviously from an education welfare service point of view, that we do monitor and track with our schools regularly, termly, in terms of those young people. And we're talking about those young people who are vulnerable. And I think when we draw down from vulnerability, what is vulnerability? Free school meals forms part of that, but then there's the categorization of children, and we don't want to categorize children as such, but there are those children who are higher level of need in terms of, we are a blended service working with our colleagues in children's services. The high proportion of the children that we do get referrals from our schools from do have a profile as such. They are those young people who are vulnerable. In terms of that vulnerability, that can be quite widespread, but one of them is around FSM. So the high proportion of children who are referred from schools do have free school meals as a profile, but there's also broader and wider issues in terms of, the wider family needs of those children as well. They're cared for by an adult. Very often the needs of the children have to be addressed by dealing with the needs of the adults who care for those children. And I think that's one of the areas when, from a school perspective, we can engage with the child, but we have to engage with the adults. And engaging with the adults sometimes is more difficult because they have a choice in some areas to either engage with us or not engage. And that's the area, I think, the thematic area, not just for Denbighshire, but across the country, and not Wales only, but it's around how do we engage with our families. And I think that's the broader issue here, because the needs of the families have changed. The climate has changed. We're in a current economic crisis in terms of the country. The issues and impacts that has on those children who are FSM is pretty significant. The impacts for those families and some of the issues that we kind of pick up from for families and even for young people is that apathy of what is the future hold. So there are children daily who are talking about those types of issues. What is my aspirational needs? What is my future hold? Both primary and secondary. And in terms of living in those types of families and deprivation and difficulties, there are fundamental issues around, for example, housing needs. My staff go to particular situations where housing is a significant concern. If you look at the plight and the living conditions of some of the children in Denbighshire and broader, they are significant. It is an achievement in itself that those children do get to school every day. But when they are in school, they're in a safer place. We are providing them with a meal every day. It's that socialization, but it's also around their needs of those children being met. And I think that's where the focal point of my service, and certainly from a local authority point of view, is we are better placed, families. If your children are in school, it's broader and wider than education. It's around the social needs. It's about the development of those children. It's about engaging with you, the families in Denbighshire. And I think that's the more global issue that I'd like to get across, certainly here today to scrutiny, and broader and wider really, in terms of how do we collaboratively work together as a local authority across services and wider, because it's across agencies, because health is another significant factor in terms of many children. And again, it's not all post-pandemic in terms of, but there are lots of children with well-being and mental health need. Those children sit on waiting lists. There is no diagnosis. Those children have needs. That in itself, again, with families sometimes is the parents are looking for an answer and a solution as to why their children are the way that they are and how they are presenting. What we have discussions around is that isn't a reason for your child, though, not to be in school waiting for a diagnosis. We need to have those children in schools. The diagnosis in itself is the outturn in terms of that situation for the parents. But very often we are trying to educate our parents and young people around that isn't the answer and solution to the difficulties you're experiencing. We need to look at the broader and wider needs of those children around engagement and education in its broadest sense. How do we use education to engage our learners? Thank you.
Can I? Sorry, yeah, can I just respond to the final aspect, Councillor King, of you about how it's evaluated?
We have a monthly meeting with management where Wayne brings the data to our team meetings, and we then rigorously go through whether the schools that are not responding well to interventions and those that still need, and we then can target specifically those schools that need in particular. We also then are able to look at where there is good practice. So, for example, where Estin are able to, through their school inspections, identify where there's rigorous processes and monitoring, and in particular agency, successful agency working, and those schools then share at head teachers conferences, for example, and we're able to share practices so that schools can learn from one another as well. So the evaluation is done on a monthly basis. As a result of that, another example is that we identified that a communication strategy would be good to engage with parents and the broader. So we'd already instigated a communication strategy discussion with our communications colleagues for the local authority. And that will hopefully you'll be seeing the fruits of that on a regular basis, which was aligned with what came out in the Estin report. So we were relieved to see that we were well placed for that. So diolch.
Just very briefly, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just at this point, and I'm sure at other points it will come up as well, that I want to pay tribute to the work that our education workforce is doing. I use that word deliberately because it's not just teachers who are out there dealing with this. From speaking to schools, from going into schools, there are some extremely creative and sensitive ways that schools are dealing with this. Going to school and being part of that education workforce in schools now is incredibly different than it was perhaps in the times that members here can remember, in that what schools deal with, and unless they can actually deal with these engagement and attendance issues and break down barriers to education itself, they can't even begin to teach them to read and write and those academic skills. Our schools are incredible. They're incredible in Denbighshire. That, as Wayne has alluded to, this is something that's UK-wide, and they've had to be very creative under very difficult circumstances, economic circumstances that are challenging all of their own. We'd love to plough as much money as we could into schools to deal with this. However, we're in the position that we're in. We know what local government finances are like. We've talked about them at length. But schools aren't giving up. They're very solution focused in what are very trying circumstances sometimes, and I really do want to pay tribute to them and the work that they do.
So just very briefly, what you were talking about, the wider society. As councillors, we also have responsibility as corporate parents. What support would you like us as a committee to help you in this particular area? What would you like us to assist you in this?
Somebody said more money to my left here, which yes, that would be fantastic to plough more money, but we're all aware of the financial situation that we're all facing. The kinds of support, obviously it is the messaging that we have got a tight policy on attendance that we follow, and all our schools, 55 schools, have adopted this policy. It is a consistent message that goes out, and obviously reinforcing those messages. As Ruth mentioned, we are working with colleagues now on a communication strategy that it will be a dripping tap technique, so that there will be something out on Denbighshire social media numerous times a month, highlighting the importance, things such as if your child is late for half an hour every day, he or she is missing out, and I don't know the numbers and the stats, but missing out on maybe 3 weeks of education that will never be taught again. It's those kinds of messages, and around taking holidays during term time, and reinforcing those those messages all the time. So that parents, and Wayne's mentioned that there is at times difficulty engaging with parents. You will be engaging with them in a different way, and it is just reinforcing the message and the value of regular attendance. Wayne, I don't know if you've got a list.
So, just to answer your question, I think, obviously, as members, I think it is that thematic kind of messaging in terms of, for families, you will come into contact with families daily in terms of your work and otherwise. I think it is that message that Denbighshire does matter. We do care for these families. I think sometimes, that engagement with families is very difficult, and that takes time. And I can prove that in terms of some of the funding. Obviously, I've got a core team of 4 people. That has been expanded by 3 with Welsh Government funding, Community Focused Schools grant. However, what we've shown is those staff members literally have to have daily contact with certain families to build that relation. My core team are not able to do that because of the numbers of referrals and other work that they have to undertake, which is the statutory area as well. That is in our papers around fixed penalty notices, core work and other works. What it's shown is, though, and I'll just give you a couple of examples, really, in terms of some of our schools, we've had feedback from certain parents who have said, and these are children who are down to like 10, 20% attendance. We've got them up to like 80 and 90% attendance. Those parents, though, now say they've got a value and worth and they've got an identity in their schools. But that has not happened overnight. This takes time. It's working with. There are those apathy, even with parents, that I didn't have a very good experience in my own education, my own childhood experiences. That's not for all, but that is for a high proportion of the cases that we're involved in. It's making that change, but that change, unfortunately, costs in terms of time. It costs in terms of staffing. It's very people-led in terms of this area of work. So you can have systems, and systems are very important in terms of attendance, but it ultimately means around there has to be people. It's people-led systems to actually engage with those families, go out, have those discussions, work with them, build up a relationship, and then work between home to school, school to home. And that's what those staff members are doing daily. Has that proven to work? The answer to that question is yes, and that's been fed back to the Welsh Government in terms of this funding to say, are we getting value for money? Yes, we are getting value for money. But actually, the resources, the demand is greater than the actual resource.
To what's been said, or is it a new question, Colette? Well, I'm afraid I've got about 10 people in front of you. Sorry about
It just very quickly, Geraint has mentioned social media, and in response to Diane's questions, out in the community, something that members can do is to be mindful of the kind of thing that goes on to social media. I see terrible pile-ons on threads of things to do with children and young people in Denbighshire as far as what's going on, and just, I don't know if you can speak to people and just set out the picture that Wayne and I have of the circumstances some of these children are living with and facing with. There's a very much a blame culture, and we see it in social media a lot. It can be vicious. So if members can just be mindful of that, and just spread the word that it's a tough old world out there for these children and young people. And yeah, it's not just a case of them misbehaving a lot of the time. There's real social reasons behind it.
Councillor Bobby.
Thank you, Chair. People keep talking about being brief. I will try and be brief. We all know there's a consistent increase in the incidence of mental health with children in Wales in general. Not just because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but exacerbated by it. Are we doing enough, do you think, to help children and families when it comes to mental health? This can obviously lead to attendance issues as well. Have we ensured teaching staff and other staff, as you say, it's not just teachers, are trained and able to help in these cases? And can I ask another question as a supplement, a short supplement? Is the proposal to change the school calendar year encouraging parents to holiday outside of school times, leading to attendance issues? That's a sort of supplementary different question.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. If I'll start off, you are right, and you know it's in Appendix 3 of the report that we Wayne's team there is an on-call help desk from 9 till 4 every day. So any school that's got any concerns about any attendance issues with children, there is an emergency service that they can call, and somebody will answer that phone and take whatever action is required. Out of all those calls that come in, about 54% of them, of the issues around non-attendance and issues around engagement and participation, 54% relate to anxiety, mental health issues. Since January 2022, of the referrals that schools send into the service, 87% of them cite some form of mental health concern with regards to the reasons possibly behind poor attendance. So mental health and the issues associated with poor mental health certainly has an impact on attendance. What do we do? I could spend another 3 hours on that because we did a members workshop. For some of you that will remember, I think it was last term, a members workshop on all the work around trauma-informed schools, Friends, Resilience, and all the various programs we use to support the mental health of young people. We filled 3 hours in the workshop and everything that is done. So there's a huge amount of work that goes on to support the mental health of young people. It does help, but it is, as Wayne said, it is wider than what we can offer as well, and it is something that we are very, very aware of. And as we evaluate what we do, when we see there's an emerging need maybe in the referrals that are coming through, well, our ed psych department then they will think, okay, how can we react to this and provide that additional support to schools to be able to support the the families that they care for. So mental health is a massive contributing factor. With regard to the proposals around the school year, obviously the consultation has been out about changing the dates and the terms. Obviously, everybody are free to answer the consultation. I know there's conflicting opinions around changing the school year. My personal view is that the first term is always very, very long. Students and teachers and staff in schools report by Christmas they're on their knees. It is a long term. This next half term I think is 5 weeks. I haven't got the difference between a 5-week term and an 8-9 week term in a 7-year-old pupil's life is a long time. So a more consistent sort of regular breaks and regular terms could have, and I can't measure this at all at the moment, could have a positive impact on attendance, which is part of the consultation. Time will tell. We don't even know what the outcome of the consultation will be yet, but time will tell. If it does change, how does that have a positive impact? And it could have an impact with regards to school holidays, for example, because the terms will be very different to what they are across the border. So that has an impact as well. I don't know if that answers your question or if Wayne wants to.
Just to very quickly, just to supplement that point, I mean, just to give from an operational point of view, do terms have an impact upon us within Denbighshire? Yes, they do. I mean, we just had the Christmas period where obviously schools were open till very close to the Christmas break. Those do have an impact upon families and others. So you do find a curtailing of attendance in that last week, simply because, you know, there are families then who have other priorities, not necessarily the right priorities, but they have other priorities. And because of the terms and the length of the terms, they do have an impact.
Thanks. It has helped. I was just wondering if parents had sort of preempted the possibility of the new style of you know, holidays, if you like, across the year, and they were sort of thinking ahead, thinking, oh well, if this is coming in, we'll, you know, could have increased their sort of keenness to go on holiday outside of the main holiday.
We haven't seen that yet.
No. Okay. All right.
Well, next one on the list is Councillor Gareth.
Yes, I think Councillor Bobby had just stolen some of my thunder here, but I will carry on. Section so back to the report on 4.12, the current position of Denbighshire. We are lagging behind, unfortunately, the rest of Wales. I was just looking at the data a bit further. What is the range of schools? So for instance, what's our lowest performing school versus our highest performing school? And leading on from that question, sharing of good practice within our school is so very important. I mean, this whole subject is the bedrock. You know, we can give them a quality education, but it's getting them there in the first place. And reading what Estin say in their reports recently on improving education attainment and attendance, it's quite interesting that we share this across Wales. But just the data on the lowest to the highest would be great. And then going on from there, the use of fixed penalty notices, it's quite a controversial area in some cases, but I'd like to ask how effective these tools are. I think particularly in the cases of unauthorized holidays, where parents can save literally thousands of money, particularly when a holiday is very important to people and families to relax their mental health. How are we going to stop them going on term time? And how much is this down to enforcement by head teachers? The head teachers already have to run the whole school. It seems like we have put a lot of onus on the head teachers here, and I just wanted to know their training and development, that this is not just head teachers, but across the whole school. That's my opening questions, and I will come back later on about something else, but if you can come back to me on those 2 points. So there's a question on the data, the range of what we have from the lowest to the highest schools in attendance, and also the fixed penalty notices on the use of unauthorized holidays, and your view on how we can get away with not putting that in. Thank you.
Down to you.
Thank you. I will be brief. I picked a few sort of questions slipped in there as well. So around sharing good practice, yes, we do that. Estin, if you read some of the Estin recent this term Estin reports, you will see, and I know that Ruth's picked them out. She's got the quotes there ready, but there are, you know, it is highlighted that there is exceptionally good practice in our schools. We do share that. When we are aware of things that work, we share it through different meetings and, you know, head teacher conferences and so on. Fixed penalty notices, how effective they are. You know, we had 2 members of the team in court this week. You know, it is the process that we've got. When we reach the point of fixed penalty notice, it means that is the end. We have tried absolutely everything to get those pupils into school by that point. That, you know, that is the final straw where you know, there is action against the parents or the carers, because they are breaking the law. You know, and when anybody breaks the law, there is a consequence, and it's usually a fine. You know, that is the process. You know, you could argue, you know, speeding fines, how effective are they? You know, parking fines, how effective are they? You know, it In some cases, it is effective. In other cases, where they've already made savings of £2,000 on a school holiday, a fixed penalty notice is not going to be as effective. But that is the process that that we follow, and that is the current guidance that we adhere to. The lowest to the highest performing schools, Wayne will have to help me out. I'm a linguist, not a mathematician. So hopefully Wayne will have remembered. Obviously, we don't name schools.
No.
Here, so that we're not making comparisons. Thanks, Wayne.
Okay, so just to answer your question, the lowest performing school is just over the 80% mark. The highest performing schools have actually exceeded the position of COVID. So that not all schools in Denbighshire are below the performance pre-COVID. They actually have attained the same level that they were in 2018-19, and in fact exceeded that. That's rural primary schools across the county. That's not specific to a particular area in Denbighshire. Up to 95, 96% attendance. So we've got schools at 95, 96% attendance, and we've got schools just over the 80% mark as well. In terms of fixed penalty notices, what I would say is the issuing of those, and there is data in the report, the primary focus I've found is that is an early interventive part where working with schools, we're saying to parents, we can't tolerate the non-attendance of your child. We've notified you. We have a responsibility to notify them. The warning element of a fine has shown the greatest impact than actually the fine itself. So the warning to a parent usually has, and we've got data again, 78% of the warning letters that go out, we then analyse the attendance of those children after receiving that letter. There is an improved performance of those children. What we find is those that are entrenched, i.e. those families that are ultimately attendance is an issue and it's a core element, they do end up to a fine, but then the fine, the fixed penalty fine, reverts back if there's a non-payment of that fine back to the original offence. And the original offence is the non-attendance of the child at school, which is under the Education Act. That, if then going to court, potentially a parent can be fined up to £1,000. Every case in my management of this area of work in the last 15 years, there hasn't been a case that Denbighshire has not taken to court where the case has either ended up with a conditional discharge or there's been no outturn. So from a positive point of view, there's been justification why we have taken those cases. It's comprehensive in terms of the report writing, and it absolutely outlines why we've had to take that course of action in every case.
So, sorry, Chair, just very quickly on that, just on that figure and that range. So as you say, we are kind of sort of slightly under the average, and you've heard that was quite a range there that Wayne went through. I was here on Tuesday as part of cabinet discussions on the budget, and we heard that Denbighshire's settlement was slightly higher than some of the other areas. One of the reasons for that is the rise in our free school meal numbers. And we've already heard today that the correlation between disadvantage and poverty and the issues that we're dealing with in engagement and education. So I just wanted to make that point that, you know, we're living where we are. There's things going on that we know, and say a rise in the free school meal data is a really strong indicator that our families are struggling more and more, and also that we've got that section who aren't eligible for free school meals, who are very often struggling in similar ways. So just wanted to put that context on. Thank you.
Sir Alan Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. From the recent Eston report, I'm looking at the recommendations for schools. Do we feel that they're relevant and realistic, and what can be done to meet them?
Yeah, the Eston report that was published in January was published last week. Obviously, it's a thematic review. It's a review that the Eston inspectorate have taken in, talking to schools, talking to local authorities, and to Welsh Government, and they do highlight, there are recommendations for schools, there are recommendations for us as a local authority. and for Welsh Government as well. The recommendations for schools, when I read the report and looked at the recommendations, there wasn't anything there that I felt worried about, that we are not currently working on. The only one that we've had recent discussions on, and I think it is an area that as an authority and as schools, we may be able to develop further. And we've had the discussions already before this report came out, actually, about that, around engaging with the pupils themselves. And as part of the comms strategy, we know if we send a questionnaire out to young people who are not engaged with education, the likelihood of them filling out that consultation is quite slim. Therefore, but every pupil, every student will be glued to a mobile phone for hours of that day. So, you know, the direction we are looking with our comms partners is to look at, can we gather the views of these pupils who are not engaging through medium of social media? Because you will have seen on social media, you can have these, I don't know exactly what the technical term is, like questions on Instagram, questions on Facebook, that, you know, you click on it and then you see the data of what everybody else has said. And, you know, we are looking, you know, could we further engage with families, with young people through the use of that? And because it is something that we need, that, you know, we do currently do, but it would be beneficial to try and sort of further, you know, further develop that, the monitoring, the evaluating, the improving of attendance. That is Wayne's team's bread and butter. And, you know, a lot of the appendices that we've included show you some of the approaches we take to achieve that. So from the, you know, and our schools, this is a high priority. When you look at school development plans, you know, new curriculum, ALN reform, attendance, these are the you know, the issues that our schools are prioritizing at the moment. So looking at the report, you know, there was nothing there that stood out to me that made me worry. But there's always room for improvement.
Can I have one more? Oh, thank you.
Sorry, did you?
Yeah, just one more, if that's okay. Thank you for that answer. Bear with me. I just wanted to ask, is there any indication that non-availability of school transport or the cost of public transport plays a part, particularly in winter, in pupils from more deprived backgrounds not attending schools?
Yes, well, you know, you could argue, I have no data to back this up, but you could say if we provided free school transport for every single pupil in Denbighshire, all 16,500 pupils, that attendance may improve. You know, you could sort of summarize that, and that might be the case. However, there are other pieces of legislation, such as the learner travel measure, that dictate in law who is eligible for transport and who isn't eligible in transport. So, you know, from a passenger transport perspective, we adhere to the legislation with regards to passenger transport and buses. So, you know, to answer the question, you could anecdotally say yes, if we provided them with transport, they might. Not everyone, but they might. We might see an increase in attendance. However, we are not in a position to do that. We are financially not in a position to do that. We are looking at savings in transport that you will have seen from other reports the council has published, rather than increasing, because it would be a considerable financial increase should we do that. But yes, you know, I haven't really got the answer to that without you know, a lottery win.
Councillor Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Most of my questions have been answered so far, but I will come on to travel in a moment. But yeah, one of those were the punitive measures for parents that don't send them. But I think you've asked that, and in the data it shows 103 warning letters as opposed to only 5 fines. So they're obviously working the warning letters. Yeah. Coming on to travel, we've come on to that. And I do know from previous conversations that we've had, DCC spends about 7 million, is it? A bit more, which is a substantial sum. And I understand also you've just been given some more money from the LLYFRGELLOEDD. Yeah, from Wales government, you've been given additional money. Are you using that wisely? That's the thing, particularly, for example, in rural areas where a lot of taxis are being employed to take pupils from rural villages, if you like, to the main bus route.
The additional funding we received out through the LAEG, the Local Authority Education Grant, has been in relation to family engagement officers and the education welfare officer team. As with every grant, there are terms and conditions of that grant that dictate what we can spend it on and what would be approved as you know, an appropriate expenditure. Out of those two additional, if they're the ones that you're referring to, those two additional grants from the LAEG that in relation to attendance, transport we would not be able to spend that funding on additional taxis in rural areas to promote education, because it would go against another piece of legislation, which is the learner travel measure, unfortunately.
Okay, and as I understand it, the 3 mile policy, Welsh Government were reviewing that. When is that likely to be finished? And will it be more than 3 miles, or will it be less than 3 miles? And obviously, if it's less than 3 miles, that's going to impact on the transport budget.
If it's less than 3 miles, you know, if in primary schools it's 2 miles, secondary schools is 3 miles. If that is reduced, more pupils will become eligible for transport. That will have a considerable impact on that 7 million we already spend on pupil transport. When will Welsh Government review the learner travel measure? I honestly cannot answer that, because I don't know if Jill from the politician side, I know it's been discussed, it's been raised numerous times that there is an intention to review this policy, but from a timescale point of view, I don't know.
The answer is I don't know either, in a nutshell. But what I do know, when I have asked about this previously, is that, like we find with our management of school transport, it's sort of cross-departmental. So colleagues in education here deal with colleagues in another service in order to deliver the transport. So the picture itself is, when you ask the question on an education basis with Welsh Government, they have similar issues, as in, well, it depends on another department as well. It's unclear is the nutshell answer, but we do keep asking. It's in the pipeline.
Gary wants to come in.
But just for clarity, it's not a policy, it's legislation. So it would require legislative change. It's not just a change of policy. So whatever they do when they review it, they'll have to amend the legislation to change it.
I think the simple answer is it's complex and they're on it.
Councillor Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to hear Wayne's explanation that the threat of a fine has far more impact than any fine or indeed court action. So we're obviously spending a disproportionate amount of time on that end of the punishment scale to the outcomes. In fact, I do wonder what happens once the court process has happened and the child still doesn't go to school. What's next? Anyway, that's a quick question. But I was also concerned enough to ask Wayne and the team insofar as 4.3 of this report, where it suggests that where it states that Welsh Government have announced plans to bring the threshold down to where the measures for dealing with non-attendance kick in, and how will that impact on the team and their resources, it being a very small team, when that comes in, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. In terms of the actual fines, yes, when we end up in a court arena, obviously at the end of whatever the disposal is from the courts, we still have to work with those families. So we come out of the court arena, but then we are still working with children who are eligible and should be accessing education. What I would say is, depending upon what the disposals are, sorry, from the courts, we can sometimes be working with other colleagues in the local authority. So, for example, children's services with particular families and others. In terms of engagement, it does give a focal point, I think, and a refocusing for some of those families that actually they do need to work with education, simply because the courts make it implicitly clear, the stipendiary bench that they appear with, make it implicitly clear they could be back in that arena in the short term if they were not to adhere and cooperate and work with education. So I suppose that's the focal point of that, answering that question. In terms of the change that's just taken place just before Christmas from the 20% and bringing Wales now in line with England in terms of 10%, I mean, that equates to, if a child is off for 19 days in any school year, that is the now 90% attendance element. With the threshold changing, bearing in mind the climate that we're in Denbighshire and again across Wales, that puts more pressure on that actually schools, after a 6-week period, if a child is not in school on a regular basis, potentially that is a referral through to local authority services. So yes, that is a significant increase. If that was implemented and should be implemented across every school in Denbighshire and across Wales, then I think, having spoken to my colleagues, managers across Wales, we all know what that significance will be in terms of demand on service.
Thank you. Are there any plans to increase your team size then, Wayne, please?
I'll answer that one. The increases, we are reliant on Welsh Government grant funding. We are aware that there are changes proposed with regards to the funding of grants to the local authority, we use those grants to increase the team, but we are reliant on the grant funding to be able to achieve that.
Diolch, Geraint.
Yes, if I could just come in on that, Andrea, it's a really good and practical question, so thank you. The plans that Welsh Government have spoken about, as we've seen with other plans for change, will come with discussions with people like myself as far as how we make it work on the ground. And I would be surprised if that announcement is left to just say and get on with it to local authorities. I think there will be discussions, and as Geraint says, the way that grants and the way that we spend money on schools is shaped and changed as we go on. That will be part of the discussion, but it's a really good point from a practical level, and it will be something that I'll be taking forward during those discussions, that can have a real impact on local authority teams. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. Many thanks for your really detailed report, which obviously gives us a really full picture of the support that you give to schools with regards to attendance. Could I just ask that, obviously, in your report and in the recent Estin report, it's obvious that it really works most effectively when schools are in partnership with the local authority. Having been on Schools Budget Forum yesterday and being very aware of the constraints on budgets for schools, my concern is how are schools going to be able to fulfil their role in that partnership? And do we know, perhaps this is for Jill, whether Welsh Government's got any future plans to ring fence money for schools to support something that they've obviously identified as a huge challenge within Wales?
Thank you, Colette. I think the key word that stands out there is partnership, and that is the only way. You know, I think it's highlighted in the report, or it was highlighted in one version that I had. It is highlighted. There is no one solution. You know, one group or one service. We are not going to crack this problem alone. You know, it needs a sort of corporate, and everybody buys into this within the council and from outside as well. And the key partnership for us is that partnership with school. I obviously, my background, I was a head teacher, and I always used to joke that the fourth emergency service for me was Wayne's team. So, you know, when there was, you know, when I needed that support, there is a member of Wayne's team available all week, every week, there for schools to advise in some cases and take action in other cases. That happens, I won't say 365 days a year, but it's through the holidays as well. There is an on-call rota system throughout the school holiday, so it doesn't end at the end of term. They might have a day off, Christmas and Boxing Day, but apart from that, it does happen throughout holidays as well. So that partnership with schools is key. We have got an excellent relationship with our schools. We have the team around the schools where all the relevant staff attend, and you know, the children that are discussed in those meetings are the children that we are talking about today, the non-engaged children, the ones that don't participate, with poor attendance and so on. And then it is very much a joined up approach then as to how we provide that support. How are schools going to cope? They are, you know, that is a challenge. It's all about spinning plates, isn't it? You know, we've been there, you know, we all do it. We all go that extra mile, and we're all chasing that sort of 25th hour in the day. It is a priority, and it's all about prioritizing, and you know, attendance and engagement is a priority, and you know, working with the local authority, with head teachers, is working, and you know, it does work in the majority of cases. With regards to Welsh Government's intention to ring fence funding, I'm not aware of any intentions to ring fence this funding. However, when we do receive grant funding, for example, for family engagement officers, the terms and conditions of that grant is always quite tight. And therefore, it might not be something I would call a ring fence, but it does state you can spend it on X, Y, and Z. So you could argue that that is some form of ring fencing.
Gareth, were you trying to ask a supplementary, or was it an additional question?
Yes, yeah, it is a supplementary, and it's following on from that. If I can ask it, please, is that okay? Sorry, am I asking the question then? Sorry.
Are you asking a supplementary question? You said yes to that.
I am, yes. I mean, we've talked a lot about the sticks, if you like, what we do when it happens, but it should be about the focus on preventative. And if we're going to prevent things, we need to listen to people and get their feedback. I'm just wondering what feedback we'd had on this action that we're taking, and it's going forward today in this plan, from not only the teachers and the head teachers, but also the buy-in of the parents, which is the most concerning, and the pupils. If peer-to-peer pressure could put on, come on, let's go to school, that sort of attitude, it's that culture we need to change. What practical measures and feedback have you received from this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. you're right. Prevention is far better than cure, and there is a lot of preventative work that goes on. The vast majority of the 16,500 pupils in the authority are not referred through to the EWO service. They are not referred through as having attendance issues. In part, that is down to the preventative work that we do, that schools do, those positive messages that go out. Parents, communities, families also play a part in that preventative role as well. And obviously, prevention is key. And our comms strategy that I mentioned will be a part of that sort of preventative message. We're even looking at trying to get some famous people to give us some messages, sort of successful people that appeal to the younger generation. And, obviously I have asked some younger people for ideas because my ideas might be dated. So, to promote that message, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't have gone to school. Type of messaging as part of this prevention to stop these families and these children falling into the sort of pitfall of non-engagement and non-attendance. Feedback, you're right, again, is feedback and evaluation. Going back to the original first question, feedback and evaluation play a crucial part in this, because what we can do, and it goes, I'm going back to the social media side again, from regard to the social media comms strategy we're working on, we will get feedback on that, on what works, how many, who's engaged, how often have they engaged, that is just one part, but feedback through school councils, feedback through the youth council, and feedback from schools and teachers. It is something that, we discuss regularly. But, as I said, one of the recommendations from the Improving Attendance in Secondary Schools paper that Estin published on Thursday around developing more effective methods to gather the views of pupils, that was the one that I do think we can develop further to get that sort of live feedback.
Okay, if I can just come back, as a governor, I feel positive that this culture change in Denbighshire is happening more and more, and we are focusing now our attentions on this, and it is a whole school approach, and I welcome that. And I'm just so reassured today that both Geraint, Jill, Wayne and Ruth are here, and I hope that in 12 months' time or wherever that this is a significant improvement. But thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the problems, I understand the issues, and like I say, the monitoring of the absenteeism or lateness and what have you, is there any data to show any patterns, whether it's like Mondays and Fridays or Mondays, Tuesdays? I just wondered for what one part of the question. And can we put a figure on what it's costing for this pupil not to be in school, that we can use that as a threat, or in a highlight in your comms and thing, to sort of say, by missing school so many days and that you've lost this, so you're not going to get it back. And I do believe that the parents have got a lot to do to help and ensure that their children get to school. I know that there is some apathy with some parents, but there are others. And how many times do they get a letter to say that their attendance isn't up to the mark before you go into the penalties or the fines or whatever you like to?
Thank you very much for your questions. It's quite a number of points, so I'll go through them. From a monitoring point of view, obviously we monitor our schools.
Yeah.
Basically weekly, monthly, and termly. There's data there. Obviously, those schools that we feel are underperforming, it's based upon the data, and we have attendance codes. So every child is registered every day, twice a day, AM, PM. The coding that we have dictates then the kind of level and actions to be taken. So it gives a focal point for the schools and it gives a focal point for us, the local authority, right down to the individual pupil level. And that's where we scrutinise too. So we scrutinise the school as a whole school, but then we scrutinise the school down to year groups, and then year groups down to individual pupils, and even down to individual families. So you could, for example, have, and we do have, examples of, in a particular school, the attendance is affected by 10 families. We can go down to that level. We know exactly what that situation is. So that's the detail that we scrutinise down to. We then ask the questions of the school: how are we effectively working with that 10 families, for example? What are we doing? What are the interventions? What are the supports? That's the level that we go down to. In terms of overall, in terms of patterns and attendance, yes, in terms of actions that we take, the letters, we've got an attendance policy. There are clear processes that the schools can follow, but the schools understand you don't have to follow letter by letter. There are cases where, for example, we can accelerate situations where, for example, the families are not making contact with the schools. Well, then we wouldn't continue to send out multiple further letters. We ask the question, what actions need to be taken? So the attendance policy is there as a policy to give an outframe for the schools as to how to proceed with this. But obviously they can accelerate those matters as well, and they're fully aware of that. We have regular training with both the administrative staff and with the senior management teams in our schools, literally every single year. And many cases will be fast-tracked through to that type of level of support.
Thanks, Chair.
I'd like to say, firstly, as a parent, that the message about the impacts of absenteeism does get through. It's predominantly on every newsletter. We've had written letters come home. So for those of us that engage in that, the message does get through. And I think you mentioned before that that's the challenge, is getting people to engage with that. But it's there in a nice, clear, coloured chart. Unfortunately, the colours are often red and orange instead of green, but it's clear for us to understand. I wanted to talk about how you are recording reasons. I think this is crucial. I couldn't see either in the Estin report or in the policies a clear policy of how you are doing it. I think you are doing it. I don't know whether it's consistent across schools. You do mention you have a good idea of what the root causes are, the main impacting reasons are. For us as councillors, those clear charts can be really useful for talking about this on social media. They often follow a Pareto rule. So 80% of absenteeism is probably caused by 20% of reasons. It might be 70-30, but when we can see that in a clear graph, when we're trying to engage with people on social media who might be dismissing this as all the fault of poor parenting, or some reason like that, we've got a clear data that we can put down. We don't have to get into some political discussion and spend hours ranting on social media. So I'd like to be able to see in these policies that there is a consistent method for schools to record the reasons why someone is absent. I understand it can be tricky. One child might say they were ill and it turns out they were being bullied, so that's the reason. Someone might say, oh, the car broke down, but it might be because they couldn't afford the bus fare. So I understand it's a challenge, but I think it's crucial, because when you have that Pareto analysis and you know what 20% of reasons are causing 80% of absenteeism, you can direct your limited resources at the biggest impacts and at the biggest causes and have the greatest impact. It's going to really help us all get this message out. So I'd really like to see that. It might be there. It might be just that I've missed it in these reports, but I couldn't see it in the Estin report either. There's mentions. We're clear that free school meals and poverty play a big role. It's mentioned about school transport, but it's mentions here and there. And to me, it doesn't fit. It's difficult for me now. I want that. I want that graphic, that simple graphic, like the bar charts we get on the newsletters, that lets me go, no, this is the problem, and this is what we're doing about the biggest impact. So, thank you.
In the monthly reports and the monthly meetings that we have as senior managers in education, Wayne provides a report, and that is the level we get. So from a school's point of view, on their SIMS, on their information management system, where they record attendance, there is a national coding system that that every school in Wales follows. You know, the schools don't make it up. It's set there. So, for example, M, if there's an M code, that's medical. That means the school has seen a dentist appointment letter or a doctor's appointment letter or something. If it's I, it's illness. So that's where the parents have said, you know, John was ill today and he couldn't come in. You've got, you know, there's a full page of these codes for various, you know, if there's an approved sporting activity, if, for example, you know, they play for some sporting team or something and the head teacher approves that, you know, request comes in to say, you know, they're playing for Everton Academy, you know, can they go have an afternoon to go and play football? The head teacher would approve that, and that would be marked as an approved sporting activity. So when the data that Wayne's team provides us as managers, as senior managers to scrutinise, is we can see on a school by school basis, the vast majority of these non-attenders, it's all illness. So that's when we engage with the school nurses and health to say, you know, what's, and it might be the case that chickenpox has gone through that school, and you know that is the reason, but the data just raises questions that we need to answer. So it might be that, you know, conversation with a school nurse then provides that reason why most of the codes are illness. If we see any N codes, N is no reason given. So that is, we don't know why these children aren't in school. Wayne's team challenges that because we need a reason for every absence. So any N codes are challenged, and then the school then chase those up with the families to make sure that the records we have, we are able to analyse based on the reasons given. We have to go on what the parents tell us the reasons are. And that's what's recorded. So, you know, an approved holiday has one code. A holiday that hasn't been approved gets another code. You know, there's codes for days when the school's closed due to snow. You know, there's all these codes, and we can analyse, and we do analyse that monthly to try and find the patterns. We could, on a county level, not going down to school level, we could, and it's not, you haven't missed it, it's not in the report, we would have the data as to, you know, for schools, if our average is, I think, was it 88.9 or whatever our average is, how is that remaining sort of 11.1% made up in, you know, is it holidays, is it illness, is it medical appointments, is it sporting activities? So, you know, we do have that data, and each school has it on a school basis as well. And for the sort of the schools that we identify as the schools that require that additional support, we provide that level of data for the schools.
Thank you. I've allowed the discussion to run on because it's such an important topic, featuring not just at county level, but nationally, regionally and nationally. That's why I've allowed this quite considerable overrun. But I think everybody that had a question to ask, I think, has been accommodated. So I would like to take you now to the recommendations, which were initially that scrutiny are invited to discuss the details of this report and to identify any matters raised that require further clarity or examination in the future. Well, we've discussed the detail. So members, can you add to those recommendations anything that you would like further clarity or examination in the future on, please? Any comments? Yeah, Martin.
Can I challenge you then to do me that graphic, that you know, it sounds like you've got the data. You know, I'm looking for graph of the year. There's a councillor hall graph of the year competition. Currently in first position is Liz Thomas's funding gap chart. Because it was clear and it was an easy to understand message. You don't have to be a data specialist to understand it. I think you've got the data there to be in a contender for graph of the year.
We have got the data. I am meeting with our data officer tomorrow on another matter, and I will set him that challenge because personally I wouldn't have the skill to do it, but I know a man who can.
Right, well, can I just add in there then? I think probably, you know, the committee have real concerns, like we all do, about this situation. So how would you feel now then if we were to add in a recommendation about a further ongoing report in future to see how we've progressed? And if so, at what sort of interval? How would 6 months be reasonable, or would that be?
Sorry, would I'm just thinking, say 6 months. How about if we did it in September, we would have the academic year data. If you know, I know it's a bit longer than 6 months, but if that's acceptable.
Makes every sense to link any subsequent reports to the academic year. It might provide a bit of structure and context. So if we say, you know, now there's a light come on down here, is that Terry, is it?
No, it's mine. Well, I was just going to agree and propose that
Yeah.
we do include that in the
Right.
recommendation.
Okay, so Bobby's made that recommendation. Diane has seconded it.
Do you want any charts or anything in that one?
Do you want some what's the correct word?
Information report.
I don't know.
It will be full of graphs.
You might have opened a can of worms here, councillor. Right. So it's moved and recommended that we've adopted the report, discussed the details. We require an ongoing reports, I think, but linked to the school year for some sort of clarity. So that's moved and seconded. Are all the members in favour of that? Good. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's been full. Thank you very much. As ever, your reports are very, very clear, as always. So at this point, I'm going to call a short break in the meeting and then move on to the libraries team and apologise for keeping them waiting. Thank you, members. That was a very prompt break. Thank you very much for your help. Apologies to the visiting team for running late, but I think you'll understand the importance of the previous item. So we now go to item 6 on the agenda, which is library service standards and performance, which you'll find at pages 75 to 94 in your pack. And this is to consider a report by the principal librarian, which highlights the library services performance against national standards and seeks the committee's observations in relation to the committee's report. So I think we have the lead member and the head of service and the principal librarian. So welcome all. Thank you very much for coming in.
Diolch yn fawr Cadeirydd am y croeso a diolch i bawb am fynychu. Mae'r wybodaeth sydd gennym i mewn gwirionedd wedi grynhoi yn llwyr yn yr adroddiad sydd o'ch blaen chi. Mae dim ond gwneud chydig eiriau o'r paragraff cyntaf unig cyn trosglwyddo i lysgrif bydd yn mynd â ni drwy'r adroddiad ac llwch chi fynd efo gyda chrib man adeg ynny. Mae Sir Ddinbych yn perfformio'n dda. Dyn ni'n sôn am 22-23 wrth gwrs. Mae'r adroddiad yma flwyddyn bron ar ei hôl i. Ond yn ystod y blwyddyn mae'r adroddiad yn dweud bod y Sir Ddinbych yn perfformio'n dda mewn nifer o feysydd yn enwedig mewn perthynas â mynediad gyda phresenoldeb mewn digwyddiadau, ymweliadau pen a benthycwyr gweithredol i gyd uwchlaw'r canolrif. Mae'r gwasanaeth hefyd yn perfformio'n dda ar gyfer materion ac yn dangos ymwybyddiaeth o'r gofynion newidiol ar ddarpariaeth technoleg wybodaeth mewn llyfgelloedd. Fod sy'n ymdrech yn perfformio dda ar hyn o bryd, ac mae gan ei gynlluniau ystyriol ar gyfer cyfeiriad tymor byr yn y dyfodol, mae pryderon ynghylch sut y bydd y gwasanaeth yn gallu ymateb yn y tymor canolig, ac os bydd toriadau ar agweli'r i wasanaethau llyfrgell 24-25 yn dwyn ffrwyth, ydyn ni bellach yn gwybod bod y ffrwyth hwnnw bellach ar y goeden. Yn y cyd-destun hwn, mae'n arbennig o bwysig felly bod y gwasanaeth yn cynnal arolygon defnyddwyr yn 23-24 sef eleni a hefyd 24-25. A dwi'n gobeithio bydd hynny yn cadarnhau yr hyn mae'r argymhelliad yn rhoi i ni wedyn. Diolch.
Thank you.
Bore da pawb. I just want to take this opportunity to introduce you to Debbie Owen, who is our new Principal Librarian. Deb has been in post since November, and this is her first scrutiny meeting. So I think I'm going to be doing most of the talking, but Deb is here, I've said, to answer all the difficult questions.
Welcome, Debbie. I'll make sure they don't bite.
Okay, so I won't go through the report in detail, but I just want to give you some key points. As Emrys mentioned, this is around our library performance in the financial year 22 to 23. We submit a report to Welsh Government, and then Welsh Government commissions somebody to look at everybody's reports, and then we get a letter back from them just before Christmas to say pretty much what we've just told them. So that's why we come to scrutiny. It feels a bit late, but it's just the process that we follow. Just take your mind back to the beginning of that financial year 22-23. We were still very much in COVID time. So our access to library was still quite disrupted at the beginning of the year, but it's really gratifying to see that our performance really improved very quickly on the ending of lockdowns, which I think shows you the value of the library service and the way that we were able to pivot during lockdowns to be able to make sure the service was available to customers and remain consistent through significant changes. The Wales Public Library standards themselves are due to be reviewed. I think you'll note that the current framework has simply been extended for a couple of years, but we are expecting a new framework for Wales Public Libraries to be published next year. So we might see some slight change from Welsh Government policy in respect to the library standards. But the current standards, I think we hold our own in terms of delivering them. And they are also very much in line with what our library customers themselves tell us that they value. An area, we do try to respond to people's needs. So you'll note that where we talk about access to IT, the use of our computers has gone down significantly, hasn't come back to pre-COVID levels. But we have changed our access, so it is possible now to be able to use our Wi-Fi printing directly from your phone and your mobile device, which was something that wasn't possible before. So it's still about using libraries to access services digitally. It's just we're responding to how customers choose to be able to do it. So I won't go into any more detail, but we'll be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope members you've had the opportunity to study the report, and we had a chat about it at the briefing meeting yesterday, so I can open this for questions, and Councillor Feely was first up.
Yeah, I think it was Gareth, if I'm being absolutely
well, I've got you first and Gareth second.
But Gareth, if you don't mind going second, I'll continue. Well, as you can welcome Debbie, and I hope you enjoy the job. As you can see from this report, we have an excellent library service here in Denbighshire, one of, if not the best, in Wales. Denbighshire has met all 12 core entitlements, 8 of the 10 quality indicators with targets achieved in full. And I have to say, what a shame it is. Historic. This report is historic. What a shame, because the savings to be achieved by a 40% cut of 360,000 seems a drop in the ocean in terms of our £24 million gap. Anyway, I won't go into that. I just would like to pay tribute to and thank all those who have been part of delivering and expanding our excellent library service, and I do wish you well going forward. I have got a question. Where library services elsewhere have experienced funding difficulties, they have been run with the help of volunteers, and they've included, some of them have included cafes and meeting places, and I believe they can become thriving community hubs. Have you had any time at all to research into this, or is this too soon to ask?
I'll pick it up. I know you're looking at
I'm
me, but
looking
I'll pick
at
it up.
Debbie because, you know.
Yeah, no, obviously this is we just a point of clarification in the first place. I just need to say, I know this isn't a paper about the cuts, but the 40% cut is a 40% average reduction in opening times. The budget cut is equivalent to 21%, just as a point of clarification. In terms of thriving community hubs, it's very much part of our library strategy for our libraries to be the beating hearts of our communities, and the use of libraries by stakeholders and partners, both in the third sector and the private sector, is representative of that. We do derive significant financial contributions from, example, banks that use our libraries for offering their services there. Colleges as well use our libraries, and that's definitely an area that we will be looking at going forward. We've been able to date to be quite generous in our offer of those community facilities, but we will need to be reviewing our charging policy to be able to cover our costs going forward. But our library buildings are really well maintained buildings, often right in the centre of our towns, and it would be nice to see them being made use of more and more going forward, and that's something that we'll be looking at. Speaking on Debbie's behalf, she's joined a nationwide group of librarians that are looking at opportunities for greater opportunities to bring down alternative sources of funding for libraries. So we'll be bringing best practice into Denbighshire through the establishment of the Libraries Task Force, which I think was mentioned in Cabinet on Monday this week, earlier this week. And we look forward to involving members with those discussions going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just hoping that realistically going forward, although we have taken a massive in terms of the service budget cut, that the 40% sort of opening hours could be upped with the help, or that's the wrong way to put it, isn't it? Could be reduced in terms of bringing in volunteers. So it wouldn't be, although we've had a massive cut to the service, that the actual opening hours could maybe expand again if we re-looked at it and embraced the community, if the community indeed were prepared to be embraced.
Yes, absolutely, and that's the purpose of the task force, to look at alternative models, and we do use volunteers currently in our libraries. We've not picked up great numbers since COVID, but that's certainly part of the mix going forward. Certainly, thank you.
Councillor Gareth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is around 4.9. We seem to be using, our digital offer seems to be quite comprehensive, as according to the report it was 12 months ago. Going forward, I won't go on of what's already been discussed, but we're looking at transformation. We're looking at what will be the catalyst for this change. How do we compare in Wales on this report to other people in terms of our digital offer? And going forward, how are we going to reach out our digital offer to the non-digitally educated or excluded in some cases? How is that? How are we going to do that? Because that is the serious challenge we face in the environment we've currently got. So a comparison in Wales on where we are in this report, and going forward, looking positively at what transformation on the digital front and including the digitally excluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. The Welsh Government doesn't compare library services anymore. I think they might have done pre-COVID, but certainly since then they haven't done any comparisons. So I'm not able to give you an answer on that, except that we do meet the standard. In terms of people who are not digitally enabled, it's a big part of our librarians' work, because of our integration with one-stop shops. We have a lot of people that come in seeking help with paying for bills online, blue badges, bus passes, etc., and that is something that takes quite a bit of our time. It's something I'd like to see perhaps more volunteers being utilised for that. We also host projects which do seek to expand digital engagement. So hopefully you've seen recently Compass have been advertising access to learning about digital access, and the libraries are hosting a great number of those sessions, informal sessions and more formal sessions, and that's something that we will continue going forward. Digital access to library services absolutely shot through the roof at the beginning of COVID. So people who were choosing books, traditional hardback books from libraries, very, very quickly went on to accessing digital resources, which is why our spend on digital resources did go up substantially, and we're continuing to meet the needs of our digital customers as well. Thank you.
Okay, if I can just come back, I think communication and the way we market it is really important. We have a schools library service as well. What integration with schools have we got currently, and how well are we going to advertise it in the future? Thank you. The digital offering, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that we have a schools library service anymore.
Oh, we don't anymore, right? Okay.
But we do engage with schools.
Do you want me to come in?
Great.
Just as an example, we do try and work with the school librarians where they are. So
sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So I have recently been working with the new librarian at Prestatyn High School. Last year we went in and we did some assemblies to the two young, is it the year 7 and 8 students? We gave an assembly and told them all about the e-books that they were able to download, audio books, all the online resources that we offer, and we did see a little bit of a take up from them. So going forward, we want to do more of that.
Just the other thing with the kind of what makes librarians so special is they are so good at helping people find information. And when we were all youngsters, that was about being pointed to the encyclopedia department of the library, whereas now it's about finding information online. Librarians are information professionals, so they can advise on seeking truth on the internet, which is quite a skill. Those are the sorts of kind of professional librarian skills which we really want to be able to maximise as much as possible going forward.
Yeah, thanks very much, Liz, and a big thank you to those past and present employees, the librarians, on this report. Thank you.
Councillor Emlyn,
Emrys.
Emrys, do you like to come in?
Ia, diolch yn fawr. Dim ond i sôn yn sydyn am yr cysylltiad a'r ysgolion. Na, does gennym ni ddim gwasanaeth llyfrgelloedd ysgolion rwan, ond Mae llyfrgelloedd ysgolion yn mannau pwysig I lawer iawn o disgyblion o ran dysgu a hefyd lle I droi mewn iddo pan nhw eisiau llonydd. Ac wir I chi rwan am mhrofiad I fel cyn athro o weld yr disgyblion ysgol yn wirfoddoli I fod yn y llyfrgell ac I fod yn gweithio ac yn dysgu am y system. Mae'n gosod nhw'n lle da iawn pe mae'n amser yn dod yn y dyfodol pe mae y llyfrgell y dre neu'r llyfrgell leol yn gofyn am wirfoddolwyr ac yn wir pan fyddwn ni'n chwilio am lyfrgellwyr newydd hefyd, y staff newydd.
Thank you. Councillor Ellie, John?
Yeah. Thank you. Is it? Oh, it's yes. Afternoon. Prynhawn da pawb. I think some of my questions already be answered, but I'll just read it out again, Chair. I agree that future surveys will change, but my question is the library service, is it going to ensure that provision will meet the needs of residents, customers in the future? So I know we've got the e-books, and I was so pleased to learn about the fact that you're helping the one-stop shop residents who don't do internet, blah, blah, blah. But it's the future surveys, Liz, that I want to know. You know, what else ideas have we got to expand? Even though we've got the reductions in hours. Okay.
Yes, Debbie's planning on doing a customer survey this year. So we will be getting feedback from customers on how they'd like to see the library service respond to their needs. So we'll have information about that in future performance reports.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Martin's next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I use our library in St Asaph. It was fantastic, we go there on a Saturday, we could get 10 books, kids books for reading through the week. We played with the Lego and it was really good. I could never understand why it wasn't busier, it's such a free, great thing to do with your kids on a Saturday morning. I'm interested in the library use quality indicators, I think they're called on here, and on number 8. I don't understand what visits per capita means, where capita are calculated per 1,000 population. It says 2,495 visits per 1,000 population. Is that right? I don't understand what that means. So I'm asking the librarian to find some information for me, which you said they're really good at. What I'm trying to understand is how many of the people I represent in St Asaph use the library, and what do they use it for? Is it a handful? Is it a lot? I mean, I can as councillors we can do surveys of residents and things like that, but I'm just wondering whether we have rather than this seems to be a kind of standardised way of indicating the library use. But for me, how many of my residents use the library? Whether you can drill that down per ward, I don't know. But can you give me a better picture than whatever that number is?
Yeah, footfall figures are a very, very blunt instrument because, you can have the same person coming into the library 100 times. So, that, we have to submit the reports that we're asked for from Welsh Government. We could tell you, not here and now, but we could tell you how many of your constituents are library members. And we can tell you how many are active library members. So there are people like, we all join a gym and perhaps don't go to it as often as we intend to. I think possibly the same with libraries. So we can tell you how many people are library members, how many are active library members. But we can't, I agree with you about the Saturday morning in St Asaph, because if you might remember that when the consultation was first launched, the proposal was to stop the Saturday morning. And there was a lot of kickback saying, please bring that back. But we haven't seen the footfall in St Asaph that we would have liked to have seen. So we have brought that back, but I'd like to see more. We do. I mean, Prestatyn. If anybody goes to Prestatyn Library on a Saturday morning, it's absolutely heaving. So it's interesting how different towns respond differently. So we could give you that information, and we can send that out following this meeting if you're happy with that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it really helps, doesn't it? Because it helps us try and sell the service as well. You know, if we can understand, you know, residents' behaviours, you know, maybe we can alter our messaging accordingly. Thanks.
Kind of just if I can just come in before I take the next speaker. Location, I think, will have a lot to do with footfall. That Prestatyn Library is really well situated in the centre of the town, and I visit it regularly because my bank are there once a week. So I enjoy going there, and I enjoy seeing what else goes there. And it's nice and warm and comfortable if you've got to sit for a minute or two. But St Asaph Library requires a journey and down a road, doesn't it, to a rather wet car park at the back of it. So that may be a feature, but we can't just pick St Asaph Library up and move it. But I remember when I was lead member for libraries going to Corwen when there was an empty bank had come available, but it was on a sort of an island, which required, when we got there with your predecessor, it was on an island in the middle of Corwen, which involved crossing main roads to get to it. It was clearly a no-no on the road safety grounds. So I think location is all important, and that may be part of what you're saying. But that's just personal.
Yes, you're right. You know, I think the locations of just about all our libraries are great. In St Asaph, we do have a group of people that meet up there regularly before they go walking their dogs along the river. So I think for them, they'd like to say St Asaph Library is perfectly placed.
Was to say something, Emrys, before I bring
Ie,
the next speaker.
Da chi 'di sôn am Gorwen, Cadeirydd. Fi'n gwybod lle mae'r banc, da chi'n sôn amdano, dwi'n mynd yno ar gyfer cyfarfodydd efo corff arall, fe sydd ddim bych yn gweithio gyda Cadwyn Clwyd hynny yw. Ond mae'r llyfrgell presennol yn llawer yn nes ac yn fwy diogel i ddau fi o'r prif feysydd parcio Corwen hefyd. Felly mae o'n ddefnyddiol iawn o ran sicrhau bod y nifer sydd yn weld â'r llyfrgell yn gallu gwneud hynny yn weddol ddirwystr.
Now, Councillor Andrea.
Thank you. Liz and Debbie, I'm bringing us back to the fact that we are performance scrutiny, and part of the recommendation is that a report comes back to us next January, a year away. This isn't going to be an ordinary year. We can't report as we have in the past. This is going to be the year that we see our libraries close almost 50% of the time. Okay. 40% of the time. So it's going to be different. We need to know up to the minute, day by day, week by week, what impact that is having. We can't just be looking at maybe having a survey later in the year, because these are going to be damaging impacts to people. So I wonder, is there a plan going forward following these closure announcements of how the impact of that is going to be monitored from day one? We can't wait for a survey 6 months, 10 months, 12 months down the line. This is going to be impactful straight away. So are we doing it differently this year insofar as progressing towards reporting back to this performance committee? And I would suggest that that is before January 2025 as well, as part of the recommendation currently suggests. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, this report that we're bringing to you today is for the financial year 22-23. So next January the report will be 23-24. So the annual report that will cover the changes will be the year after that. So you're right, it's, you know, I'm talking about blunt instruments a lot, but this is a blunt instrument to be tracking the impact of changes. So I wouldn't, you know, we will be reporting on that in the fullness of time, but actually we will be working very closely with our libraries to plan for the changes. Because we need our customers to know what changes are going to be happening for their local library, and also to register the impact of those changes. So that is something that we'll be doing, and the survey is all part of the mix. The survey is about us asking library members about what's important to them in terms of the services that we offer. So it won't be another consultation about the closures. This is about what sort of services they want to see in the libraries week by week, and that will inform our service development going forward. So that was I mentioned that in response to the digital question, because it might be that people will be asking us for more access to more digital things. I mean, when I've wanted to borrow a book from Borrow Book, sometimes I've been told I'm going to have to wait an awfully long time for it because there aren't that many available to us. So it might be that the feedback from our customers is, can you spend more money on the digital versions of books? So those are the sorts of things to inform our service going forward. So yes, we will be monitoring it. It'll come out in this report in the fullness of time, but certainly when we come back to scrutiny next year, if you accept the recommendation, then we will be talking about the report on the year 23-24. But in that report, we can mention some highlights of what we've tracked in terms of the immediate impact. And then finally, I'd expect that the task, I've called it the task force, that's just my working title for it. The libraries task force would be fed that information to inform their deliberations as well.
Okay, Andrew. Yep. Councillor Alan Hughes.
Thank you.
And Gareth again. And I'll close it down then, I think.
Oh no, I took my hand down. Sorry, I was just about the Corwin thing, so it's fine. Sorry, Chair.
Gareth.
Yeah, just going from what Andrea said, I wasn't happy that it would be so out of date, and I'm just wondering, because if it's a 24-year end, why can't we have it after shortly after the 24, if you've got all those statistics? So I wouldn't like to recommend the proposal as it stands. I would like it earlier. So I would like to throw it back and say, what's the earliest opportunity that you could bring this back? Because I believe this is because we've cancelled meetings again and again. So it's fallen out of kilter with the actual calendar are going forward. So I'd like to bring it back into line and bring it more information. I mean, previously, you know, we just had a report which showed data which was, you know, the other month, the last quarter. I'm not expecting that, but I'm not expecting it over a year late. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I can respond to that, which is the report that we're bringing today. We couldn't have brought you any earlier because we didn't receive our feedback from Welsh Government until just before Christmas rather. So as I say, what we do is we submit our information into Welsh Government in June, and then we get their response in December. So you know,
why do we have to wait for Welsh Government? Sorry.
Because what we're bringing to you is our report, our report for how we meet the Welsh Government library standards, which is a report that comes from Welsh Government. So that's what we're bringing today. But as I say, we submit our information in June. So scrutiny do have an option to see what we've submitted, but it's not authorised by Welsh Government. So
okay, no, that's so after June you could bring it as a draft version to us. That would be great. Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, but and probably been clarified since, but I think what I was going to say was what you're asking for is a different report to the purpose of this report is to feed back to you the, if you like, Welsh Government authenticated performance report. If members want a different report, then it's perfectly within the power of the committee to ask for that, but it wouldn't be this one exactly. So this one would need to come the next time we've had the Welsh Government authenticated ones. Doesn't stop you taking a different report.
So we could have the draft report essentially at the same time that they submit it.
Or a different report tailored more to the questions you want to ask, rather than the standards that Welsh Government have published.
Okay, but I wouldn't like to see too much work, given the fact that we haven't got that many more. We haven't got any more employees, so I'd leave it there. But earlier the better. Thank you.
Rhea?
Yeah, because you're looking at two different things here. As Liz said, this report is an annual report and it does come this time every year after Welsh governments have given their feedback. You mentioned there having like the draft report in June. No problem with that either. But you may also want to be looking at possibly in 6 months' time or a bit later, looking at the impact of the reduction in hours on the service and perhaps some feedback possibly from the task group or whatever it's going to be called, that you may want them to feed back to you on their findings and what, you know, their proposals going forward.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to propose that going forward. The initial findings of the task and finish group tied into the draft report. Yeah.
And I'll second.
Perfect.
Yeah. Second.
Yes. Sorry. I think that what Rhiannon suggests is a really, really great idea. I'm just thinking about the timing that would be a meaningful time to do that, because the changes aren't going to happen until June. You know, the implementation of the new model isn't going to happen until June. So I think probably it'll be September or October before we can bring anything very meaningful to you.
Right. Well, it's an excellent report. I think very encouraging results. So I can take you now to the recommendations, which are at item 3.1. Yep. Yeah, you want to speak before recommendation?
Mae'r cynghorydd Thomason wedi sôn am gau llyfrgelloedd. Does yr un llyfrgell yn mynd i gau. Fi wedi deud hynny sawl tro yn y cyfarfodydd, mae wedi cael i'w bwysleisio sawl tro hefyd, ac mi fydd y llyfrgelloedd yn parhau ar agor am lai o oriau'r wythnos. Mi fydd yr adeilad y llyfrgelloedd ar gael am y dyddiau eraill hefyd, yn ogystal ac yn ystod y dyddiau ariau agored y llyfrgell. Dydyn ni ddim yn cael llyfrgelloedd, a dyn ni'n edrych ymlaen gobeithio byddwn ni yn gallu cynyddu'r oriau yn ôl yn y dyfodol. Gwerith i flwyddyn y ddwy yn saff o hynny. Fi'n naif wrach yn meddwl amdano fel hyn. I welwch chi'n aml iawn, mewn gêm bêl-droed, pe mae chwaraewr yn cael ei anfonodd ar y cae, bod y 10 yn chwarae'n gryfach wedyn mwyn gwneud i fyny ar golled. A dwi'n fawr gredu y bydd hynny'n digwydd yn y llyfrgelloedd ni hefyd. Mi fydd y llai o staff sydd gennym ni yn gobeithio yn gallu llenwi'r bylchau sydd yn debyg o fod yn sgil colli staff yn y dyfodol.
Thank you. So take you now to the recommendations at 3.1, that the committee considers and comments on the performance against the 6th framework of Welsh Public Library Standards and considers requesting a progress report in January 25. So we have considered. I think we've had a very positive response to the report. We're all pleased with the library service as we know it, but I can see Councillor Feely's got something to say.
I would just hope that we have an addendum to that.
Yes.
Yes, the recommendation.
I'm moving to that now. So, advice, if we may.
I'm just wondering, that report in January 25, that still stands because it's the normal one. You can then either have in June, July, a report on the data that the service is going to submit to Welsh Government. Now, you can either have that as a report on your work programme, which is rather full, or you could have that as an information report. And if you see anything in that you want them in earlier, that's fine. And then that in the autumn, we look at having the initial findings of the task group, or whatever that group is going to be called, but looking at the impact of the reduction in service hours now, and the proposals that are coming, are being drawn up perhaps for a new type of service going forward.
Okay, can I just alter the word autumn to September, please?
Well, you've got 4 items in September already.
Well, we can juggle them around, Rhiann, I'm sure.
We move to all-day meetings. So we've got the original recommendation. I don't think there's any problem with that. But in simple terms, we want to know by September some sort of an indication of an impact of the changes to the service. And then next January, we've got the progress report again. Is that right?
Yes.
Have I understood that rightly?
Do you want the mid-year report, if you like, the annual the stats that Liz and the team sent to Welsh Government? Do you want them as an agenda item report at June or July time, or do you want them as an information report?
I mean, your hands, members. Do you want not in person? No.
No.
Other views? Everybody happy that that's an information report?
Yes.
Unless we see something in it that we're concerned about, and then we might change our minds. All right, Bobby?
I just think that we are more concerned as a committee on the impact that the changes, call them what you like, have on service. And I think if it's a very busy agenda in September and October would be better, I think that would give us a bit more knowledge as well in terms of the months since now. So I would suggest October if that's got a freer agenda, so as we could give it a proper airing.
At the moment, both September and November, you've got meetings, and both at the moment are full agendas. But we can look at that anyway nearer the dates. But
this is performance scrutiny, and we're busy.
It's the mitigation measures I'm really concerned, where we're up to there as well. So I'd just like to put that on record. It's what we're doing about mitigating it. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just jump in and say that it's gratifying to see members so engaged with this, and the intention is that members are involved in the task force. So we will be coming, subject to lead members agreement, we'll be coming to MAGs and asking for a rep from each of the MAGs to be part of the task force. So, there is an opportunity for members to be engaged with it outside these committees, these scrutinies. Just wanted to give you some assurance on that.
Good to hear that. Thank you. With the wording of the recommendation, please.
Well, you have considered and commented on the performance against the 6th framework, and that you in June time that you'll have an information report detailing the statistical return to Welsh Government for the 23-24 year, isn't it? That's the one. And then in October-ish, we have the initial findings of the task group that will be looking at libraries going forward. And then in January 2025, you will have this annual report for the next year of this annual report as normal.
It's a move, please.
Move.
And seconded, Terry. Yeah, thank you. All in favour of that? No, nobody against. So that's carried. Thank you very much.
You can bow.
Yeah. Can I take you now, members, to Item 7, thank you very much, officers. Thank you. Take you to item 7, which is the scrutiny work programme, of which you've got a copy in your pack. Rhiannon, are you reporting that?
Diolch yn fawr. Dyma'ch adroddiad arferol chi. A wedyn mae'r rhaglen waith, wel, fel oedd hi'n sefyll hyd at heddiw yn atodiad 1 ar dudalen 101. Mae'ch cyfarfod nesaf chi ar y 7th o fis Mawrth, a mae gennych chi 4 eitem go sylweddol yn fanne. Mae gennych chi 2 adroddiad addysg eto, un ar addysgu o gartre, un ar yr argymhellion yn dilyn estyn yn 2018. Mae'r adroddiad yna hefyd, neu y strategaeth economeg a busnes, dwi'n gwybod bod gen yr is-gadeirydd dipyn o ddiddordeb yn hwnna, mae hwnna i lawr hefyd, ac hefyd adroddiad gen swyddfa archwilio Cymru a sut ydyn ni'n ymateb i hwnna. Felly mae gennych chi 4 eitem y fanne. Dyn mae gyfarfod mis Ebrill ar y 19, mae 2 eitem yn fanne hefyd. So, fel Pwyllgor, allan o'r 3 Pwyllgor, da chi'n brysurach na'r un o'r ddau arall. So, da ni ddim yn poeni'n ormodol am eich rhaglen waith chi. Yn atodiad 2, fan o mae'r ffurflen gais ar gyfer y grŵp cadeiryddion ac is-gadeiryddion. Os oes unrhyw bwnc da chi'n teimlo y bysa fo yn help iddo fo gael ei graffu arno'n fanylach, a diolch rhaid iddo fo fod o fewn cylch gwaith y pwyllgor yma, mi feder o fod yn unrhyw bwnc sydd yn ymwneud a unrhyw beth mae'r cyngor yn gyfrifol amdano fo. Plis llenwch y ffurflenni neu fewn, anfonwch nhw i mi, a wedyn mi wneith y grŵp cadeiryddion ac is-gadeiryddion edrych arnyn nhw a penderfynu os ydyn nhw'n cytuno bod angen craffu arno fo a pa bwyllgor sydd y graffu arno fo. Mae'r grŵp yn nhw'n cyfarfod pnawn dydd Llun nesaf, felly os gynnwch chi'n yr eiliad yma, plis llenwch y ffurflen y mewn ac anfonwch i atai heddiw os fedrwch chi, plis. A wedyn fedra i ofyn yn nhw ystyried i wythnos nesaf. Yn eu cyfarfod dwytha nhw ym mis Tachwedd, mi aru nhw edrych ar un cais, a mae hwnnw rwan wedi cael ei roed i chi ar gyfer Tachwedd 2024. A mae ei wneud hefo prosesau'r cyngor ar gyfer ymgeisio am grantiau o werth sylweddol. Tebyg i be oedd codi'r gwastad a hynny'n dilyn dod allan o Ewrop. Felly, da ni eisiau gyd yn siŵr bod y prosesau sgynnon ni yn bwrpasol ar gyfer y job yno, felly. Yn eich cyfarfod dwytha, ar ei rwy'n godi'r cwestiwn oedd o ran y cynllun corfforaethol, mae 9 o flaenoriaethau hwnnw ar hyn o bryd. P'un ai fedra ni ddal ymlaen i'w cyflawni nhw yn yr hinsawdd ariannol da ni yn ni ar hyn o bryd. Mae yna chydig o drafodaethau wedi bod yn mynd ymlaen fel dwi'n dall ynglyn â hynny. Wedyn mae yna baragraff yn yr adroddiad yn fanne, paragraff rhif 4.8. A be maen nhw'n ofyn yn fanne ydy, o ran pwysau ar swyddogion i ddarparu adroddiadau i bwyllgorau, dwi'n meddwl bod y benderfyniad wedi cael ei wneud i ddiddymu'r 2 adroddiad, chwarter 1 a chwarter 3, oedd yn dod i chi am wybodaeth. Doedden nhw ddim yn cael eu trafod o flaen y pwyllgor, doedden nhw yn fel wybodaeth i chi. Fydd heine yn y dyfodol ddim yn cael eu paratoi. Mi fydd adroddiad chwarter 2 ac yr adroddiad chwarter 4 a'r adroddiad blynyddol yn dal i ddod i chi fel ag yr oedd o blaen. Ond hefyd, maen nhw'n atgoffa chi hefyd bod gennych chi fynediad at y system fyrto. So, os oes rhywbeth yn eich poeni chi, ydych chi eisiau edrych i mewn iddo fo ymhellach, mae croeso chi wneud hynny ar y system yno. Ac os oes rhywun angen hyfforddiant ar hynny, gadwch fi wybod a na i wneud ymoliadau. Dyn yn atodiad 3, mae gennym ni raglen waith y cabinet, jyst er gwybodaeth i chi, a wedyn yn atodiad 4, mae'r diweddaraf ar argymhellion o'r cyfarfod dwytha. Dwi ddim yn meddwl bod yna ddim byd arall dwi angen i godi ar hwnna, ond os ydych chi unrhyw gwestiynau, neu drwy ateb nhw.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rhiannon. You mentioned about the levelling up funding process. Will that include shared prosperity funding allocation? Because I think there could be, well, I assume it is managed by the same team or in a similar way. It's something I'd be interested in because I've been involved in local businesses trying to claim those funds, so I'd be interested in that.
Okay, it's not actually about the funding itself. That's about the processes for applying, and
yeah,
some of these funds are announced with quite short timescales for applying for them. So we want to make sure that the processes we've got in place to help the council and others to apply for them are robust.
That's what I'm interested in, is the process, not the funder, because we went through a process with a small business, and I'm interested in the process. But it was on the shared prosperity fund, so. Is it the same, or is it done
it's for any high value grant funding that will become available?
So it will include that. Okay. And the other thing was on the Verto system. I have tried to use that. I have found though it's been the data is not always up to date. Yeah, I don't know what we do about that really. As long as we're aware it's not up to date yet, we can. But sometimes I've gone looking for measures on that. I was in, I think, a strategic equalities and diversity group meeting, and I looked at what the corporate indicators on Verto that were in the report that we were looking at to see if there was any more detail, because obviously on Verto was a little bit more historical data and things like that, and the measures weren't on Verto that were in the report, and it was Verto was kept playing catch up.
Be the other way around.
Just comment on that. You mentioned the Verto system there.
I'll make some inquiries on that.
Okay.
If there's no question.
Yeah, Gareth's got his hand.
Yeah, just to respond to Martin actually about the Shared Prosperity Fund. So there are two sides of it. There is the business side, which is being run, and also the DVSE side, the third sector. Both are going to be having to be spent within 18 months. So there is a deadline about that. I don't know how, so by the time it comes up to committee, it will be 12 months left of those funding pots to spend that money and not only spend it, but get the feedback back to people. So just to bear that in mind, that the timescale might be slightly off there.
Right, point taken, I think.
Just for clarity, Gareth, it's not about those funds. I just use those as examples of the type of funding. It's for the process for applying for those grant funding or similar grant funding in future.
And whatever will be next in the future, yeah.
Right, take you then to the recommendations, which are on page 95, that the committee considers the information provided and approves, revises or amends its forward work programme as it deems appropriate, and determines whether any key messages or themes from the current meeting should be publicised via the press and or social media. I don't think we have determined anything there, have we? No. So is somebody move the recommendation that we have considered the report and approved it? Terry Mendes done that, and Bobby's seconded it. All in favour? Very good. Nobody against. Thank you very much. Which takes us then on to yeah. Item 8, it is to receive any updates from committee representatives who've attended various council boards and groups. I don't think there's a lot to report. In my own case, I sit on the Queen's Building Project Board, only to report that we haven't met since the new year. The January meeting was cancelled or postponed, so I've nothing much to report there, except that the building nears the handover point. And that's all I can report there. Has anybody else attended any boards? Carol?
Yeah, I was at the service challenge for adults, social care and homelessness, and it was just outlining the state of what, the people that needed sort of accommodation and trying to tackle it really and cut costs.
Right. Nobody else got anything nobody's been anywhere since we last met?
No, just to say the Capital Scrutiny Group meets tomorrow morning, so it won't be anything to discuss.
No, that's fine. And at that point then, we're back not far on time, just 10 minutes over. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance. It's been an excellent scrutiny. Thank you
Well-
for the 100% attendance today. That's very gratifying.